So in this video, I did some research on the motivation in education and why students are lacking motivation and how to go from here to get motivation to increase. So I kind of wanted to first look into how education has changed. And so we'd look back to, the old education styles of people like Jean Piaget and Lev Vygotsky. The teachers talk and students listen, and it's just very neat. And you raise your hand to speak and all that kind of stuff. And then in the 1970s, there was actually an education reform. And so, this is where there was more of an open style classroom and teachers were there to, help students and guide them. You look at technology, technology has changed and shaped education, standardized tests, acts of government such as No Child Left Behind. All these have kind of started to change the way that the education system works. And so then I looked into, kind of why students are so unmotivated. And we look first to see that, that students may not be able to do the assigned work. So, some students might lack the essential skills that they need, basic skills, math, cognitive strategies, students or skills that the student should know, they may not, and they may be embarrassed to let the teacher know that. The research behind it says that when the students lack the capability to complete an academic task because of these things, it's hard. The student cannot be expected to be motivated. So you can't expect them to be motivated if they don't know what they're doing. Sometimes a student doesn't see a payoff. So a student needs reinforcement, such as operant conditioning, which we talked about earlier in behaviorism. And, the research says that the use of external rewards reinforcers can serve as a temporary strategy to really encourage reluctant students to become, more willing to complete their work and, demonstrate appropriate behaviors. And then, sometimes students get overwhelmed and they get behind. And so dealing with family issues or balancing activities and friends, and sometimes they can often overdo it and they get behind in their work. So it can be very overwhelming, and then they just keep falling farther and farther behind. So these are some ways to increase the motivation issues that you find with those. And so one way to increase motivation is knowing what kind of motivation there is. So it was saying that there's 5 different types of motivation. You have knowledge, which is the student interested and wants to know more about what they're learning. Mastering, so mastering motivation, so solving the tasks successfully, it creates the student to want to learn more. Performance, so they put in extra effort and they get extra praises, their grades go up, so they can see the motivation in their performance. And then relationships, if they feel included in the classroom, if they're not being bullied, their perspective of their acknowledgement, if they enjoy class, if they enjoy the teacher, if they enjoy the other students. And then finally, involvement. So they have ownership of their work. So this is when students get to set tasks, create their own homework assignments, create their own project. Teachers need to start or can teach the student these essential skills. So once they discover that the student may lack basic math or basic skills or cognitive skills or stuff like that, really working with that student one-on-one. The uses of reinforcement, we've talked about in behaviorism and cognitivism. And then programs, to help students that are falling behind, such as inventorying the work and coming up with a plan together and, doing weekly check-ins and stuff like that. All is what the research says can begin to help with motivation. And so my opinion on all this, I'm actually going to drop a link in the YouTube comment box. It's a spoken word poem from this guy that talks about the differences in schools now compared to how they used to be, and it's just a really awesome poem. I think that you guys should all watch it. The difference that I've noticed, I actually went to Italy a couple summers ago, and the school systems there, they actually have 2 different schools that students can choose. So one is like a science high school, and then the other one is actually just a trade high school. So right out of high school, students can know a trade and start going to work, or they go to the science high school if they want to continue on to university. So I think even just having that difference in choice is a big deal, and it's crazy that we don't do stuff like that here. Some other major issues are teachers are overworked and underpaid. Standardized tests really don't help students that might learn differently, and you have to look at learning styles when you're looking into motivation as well. Kind of how does that student learn compared to how other students learn. Some might be terrible test takers, but that doesn't mean that they're not smart or don't understand the information. You have to look into the different kinds of learning styles, like visual and verbal and physical, logical, social, all that kind of stuff. And so I think that to fix motivation, it is a whole lot more than just, getting kids to want to do homework and stuff. It's, getting them engaged in what they're learning. And so I enjoyed this question a lot, definitely.